full enrollment for this evening and for an exciting evening of I think it's a great topic. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tim Lashkowski. I serve as the president of the Board of Trustees here at St. John's School, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's presentation. At St. John's, I think as all of you know, our goal and our mission is to educate the whole child, and it's to provide a holistic education that gives us the opportunity as parents to see our children grow, both as not only as students, but as people. And what we believe is essential to the part of that rollout from an academic perspective is the rollout of not only the iPad, but really what's part of the larger, what we call the Imagination Initiative. And many of you have read about it online, you've heard about it through the different media that have been communicated to you. And we think as the board that it's an exciting step for St. John's as we introduce a new tool that continues to support the goal that we use here, that we try to achieve here, from educating the whole child. The board is fully in support of this initiative. We're excited about not only Mark's leadership, but the teachers, as you can see all of them here today, the work and the effort they put in to this initiative and to the many hours that they have thought through how to use and transform the classroom with not only the iPad, but also looking at different ways to use technology. I'm excited to see this rollout happen, and I hope you are too. As far as for tonight, I just want to tell you real quick about the schedule. I'm going to introduce Mark, and he will provide some comments and remarks about the overall initiative and the iPad rollout and how we use it at the school. Then you'll have the opportunity to visit with teachers and some students at some individual stations. And you'll be able to see how the iPad has been used both already in the classroom and will be used. And then finally, we're going to reconvene for a Q&A session that will be led by Scott Parks, another member of the Board of Trustees. There are cards in the corner over here to fill out if you want to drop any questions in advance. And we'll also do that form from the audience. All with the intent of closing by 9 p.m. so we can get everybody out of here and home in time. So, again, thank you for attending the event. Thank you for your support at St. John's School. Without you, parents, obviously, if you're getting your children to school to attend, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. One change to what Tim told you about with the schedule. In between my remarks and when you go to the stations, you're going to see demos from 3 teachers on some of the things that they've been doing also, so that you'll see all of that together. At the end, we'll have some handouts for you also with really the key points from the evening, so make sure that you take those. And we're recording this, we're going to put everything online, so you really can just listen, digest, and think about what you're hearing tonight. Okay, so the first thing is I want you to be better informed and I hope inspired about this. And then secondly, to really have a better understanding of why St. John's needs to be doing this for our kids. Now, I am incredibly, tremendously excited about this, and I have been from the moment of conception for it. I'm thrilled with how it's developing. And, you know, the thing is, I get when Steve Jobs met, when he said the iPad is so beautiful, it just kind of makes you want to lick it. The educational possibilities that this thing offers are absolutely awesome. And one of my main charges here, of course, is to improve teaching and learning. And that's what the Imagine program is about. It is not about iPads. It is not about technology. It's about the education young people need. It's about a vision of St. John's as what I call a modern school. In modern school, honors our heritage, it considers where children are today, and prepares them for their futures. And one of the things we mustn't do is to assume that because we learned a certain way, our children learn the same way. Or that what was good for us is automatically good for them. Ultimately, a modern school focuses on ideas and people in our lives today and what our children need to thrive in the future. So I'm going to start in what may seem a strange place, what won't change. We will remain true to our mission, our culture, and our ethos. Kids won't be on their own staring into screens all the time. St. John's will remain a very human and a very humane place. A place where we know, honor, nurture, and love kids. Where we give them the education and relationships they need. We know there is no app for that. St. John's will be high-tech and high-touch. So, some sweeping context for why we're moving this way. All of you probably have some form of one of these. Think about a cell phone only 20 years ago. It only did one thing, and not very well.
Yeah.
The smartphone really symbolizes how the world is changing, steadily and relentlessly. We're living in a perfect storm of change, shifting local and global demographics, economic instability, scientific and technological advances. That's the world our kids are growing up in. Who knows about the next 20, 30, 50 years? I wonder what our kids will be learning from their grandchildren. Education has to respond to that. Ultimately, we must prepare students not for our pasts and not even for the present. We must prepare students for their futures. And the sooner that starts, the better. You know, schools used to be a gateway, the access point to learning. Now learning about anything can occur anywhere at any time. But schools and teachers are not obsolete by any means. Students still very much need our help, just in some different ways. And academics have to become less and less about the consumption and regurgitation of information. Now it's more about constant learning, some unlearning, and then relearning. Much of it more independently. Literacy means much more than the traditional 3 R's. I see it as the 5 C's crucial to a modern academic education. Consumption, collection, creation, collaboration, and contribution. So at St. John's, how are we taking on these challenges? Very, very well. And rather than simply tell you, I want to illustrate. So Lake, Jack, my assistants, if you could come up and help me. They have no idea what they've gotten themselves into. Jack, you may need to move this way. When I first announced this in February 2012, I said we would take our time to make sure we do it right. We've learned from mistakes and successes here and at other schools. Too often, teachers are simply given technology and expected to make it all work well. But I've seen laptop schools where the computer is basically a super fancy spiral, or someone falls in love with a particular gadget. Anyone remember Palm Pilots? So we've spent the past year engaged in some serious professional development. And this banner or timeline captures what we've done, all 34 feet of it, broken down month by month. And each one of these sticky notes put on here represents either a professional development activity, something a teacher tried in the classroom, something they learned. And this is only a sampling. Some of the highlights of it. Thanks to PA, we had carts, and each person on staff with an iPad so they could get familiar with the device. Twice we had trainers from the Texas Computer Education Association. We have worked with Educators Collaborative, a group that does this work all over the country. We've been studying other schools. There's been amazing behind-the-scenes work by people on things like infrastructure, the needs, the legal stuff. We've sent people to Austin, to Belton ISD, where they've had an iPad program for 3 years now. We've sent people to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to Atlanta, to iPad summits. We had Jonathan Martin, one of the leading experts in the country, do a day-long workshop for us. We've had focus groups and vertical teams working on this the whole time. Also, this has been an amazing team effort. You see all of the faculty who are here tonight. Now, I know it's, when you hear the head of school say this, it's kind of like, oh yeah, right. They didn't have to be here tonight. I asked for a few volunteers, and this is how many of them chose to show up. We had set a task force in motion, and it just kept growing and growing and growing to where we had 30 members steering all of this. And as we've done all this work, 2 main questions have guided it. How do we harness the educational possibilities of the iPad, and how does this alter the classroom dynamic and usual practices? Again, it's about teaching and learning. When you get to walk around the stations later, you can take a closer look at this stuff. So right now, we're sprinting from imagining to realizing. Already amazing stuff is happening, and teachers have asked me several times, can't we get the iPads in every kid's hands right now? Please, 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 can't we? So they're excited and ready. I can't tell you how proud I am of our teachers and staff and how they have taken this on. How I appreciate and how you appreciate how they model lifelong learning and a growth mindset for your children in doing this. Yes, there will still be glitches along the way, but I feel confident that all of us, school and families, are creating an exemplary iPad program. Now, before you hear from the teachers, I want to address some questions that have come up. How's that for a little bit of a teaser? The required enrollment sessions. There will be basically 3 topics covered. And yes, even though you're here tonight, you have to come to the required enrollment session. We're required for this. 3 things will happen there. We will review the acceptable use policy. It's been thoroughly revised because of this new environment we're in, and we need to make sure that we cover the expectations with everybody. 2 will be the enrollment of each iPad into our management system. This is critical because that's how we're going to make sure that your child's iPad has everything necessary on it. It allows us to push out all the materials that we need right to the iPad. Okay? Make sure it's all done properly. And then finally, the 3rd thing is what the school and teachers are doing to make sure devices are used properly and what you can do as parents. You'll hear a bit about that in each of the next few points. But for a moment, just for a moment, I want to speak to you not as Mark, the head of school, but as Mark, the spouse and fellow parent. We have a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. They are very, very much digital natives. For the most part, it's wonderful. And they're highly responsible kids. Yet we still argue all the time about screen time and about how many texts are being sent, and I sneakily check their browsing history. So I share your concerns about some of these issues. Now, issues of security in terms of both activity and the device itself. Even before the Imagine program, we took this very, very seriously. Now we're ramping it up even more. And the first thing I want to say is that the issue is behavioral as much as technological. And we need to teach responsible and safe use. But we also know the realities of kids and of technology. So here's what we do. We are ultra compliant with the Children's Internet Protection Act. We provide education through our boot camps, and we embed lessons within classrooms, and that's going to be expanded. Now for some technical bits. And please don't ask me what all this means, I just asked the tech people. A unified threat management firewall router provides our global intrusion prevention content and URL filtering. We block in all the expected categories: violence, hate, racism, adult, mature content, occult, drugs, illegal drugs, and several others. The URLs in these categories are updated every single day. We also can whitelist and blacklist specific ones at any time. We have safe search environment, meaning any browser that's connected to our network must utilize the built-in safe search feature. Next year, we may have 3 different wireless access levels: private for teachers, private for students, and an isolated guest network. Access controlled by device management. Then we can apply even more granular filtering policies. For example, we could allow social networking for faculty, but not for students. We can block certain apps associated with the URL, and the Wi-Fi vendor we're considering also has services that would provide a second line of prevention. Now, cellular data use does bypass any of the filters in place, and we haven't discovered restrictions to enable it and disable it with a passcode. So it will be covered in the acceptable use policy, perhaps with no SIM cards being allowed at school. Now, even with all that, ultimately, parents are the best defense. We have to do our job as adults, and we're going to give you plenty of tips. Placing restrictions on the device itself helps tremendously. You can assure that apps you don't want your children having access to don't make it on the device. In the restriction settings, under a different passcode, you can turn off the explicit language for Syrian music and set age limits for movies, TV shows, books, and apps. You can turn off the ability to delete an app. That way you can see anything a child has put on there. Now, since our preventative measures only work here, these restrictions also can help filter what a child has access to anywhere else. We also encourage some sort of filtering at home and ensuring good techniques, such as charging the iPad in the parents' room every night. We will stress all these and others at the enrollment sessions. As for security of devices themselves, we'll have appropriate protocols at different grades so students can lock up their iPads. We'll encourage that and try to train the kids. And we ask that you please reinforce that message. Damaged iPads. Yes, it's a concern. I'm hopeful because kids here take good care of everything around the school. You've taught them very, very well in that regard. And also, if you take precautions from the start, you can seriously mitigate the chance of damage. Buy a recommended case. I've seen iPads in those cases take some serious falls, even downstairs, and be fine. I thought about demonstrating, but I just thought it'd be the one time. We'll have guidelines for carrying and transporting the devices. Still, nothing comes with a 100% guarantee, particularly with kids and objects. They will, at some point, possibly stick the iPad into the metaphorical honeypot. For nearly 2 years, my responsible daughter has had to hold her laptop screen together with duct tape. And I wish I had taken out the recommended insurance. We will have loaners available for students who need them for a time when accidents happen. Inappropriate game playing and other activities. The distraction factor. Yes, it's a challenge, but it's not really a new one. Remember Tom Sawyer writing love notes to Becky Thatcher in the one-room schoolhouse? Going on a long time. For me, it was always the book I wanted to read, hidden inside of another book. Some of the measures described above are going to help, as will clear guidelines and consequences. Plus, the reality is, teachers have always had to deal with this issue. And now they will learn new techniques on how to monitor and deal with this, whether walking around and randomly checking or swiping screens, are using apps that let you monitor a device at any time. Again, it's a behavior and responsibility issue. It's a matter of respect in the classroom. Again, we need you to reinforce that message. I call this next category things that people worry might get lost. Among them, fine motor skills, handwriting, memory, open playtime, presentation skills, too much screen time. Don't worry. St. John's is totally committed to developing the whole child, and we know what children need at different stages. Plus, we just love interacting with kids. A few examples to ease your concern. Yes, we're bringing in iPads, but we also just opened a new garden on the green roof where 8th graders and kindergartners are working together in the soil. We're really excited about the Handwriting Without Peers app because of how it can help handwriting develop because it gives instant feedback. And one rule that will be in place, no iPads at recess. The 3rd grade biography project this year still involved kids dressing up as their characters and giving speeches. But rather than a giant board, students created a video montage of photos and artifacts. Again, high tech and high touch. Now that we've learned so much, we're committed to providing parent education. The one-to-one section of our website already has numerous items. We'll also put up something I call my manifesto, which goes into much, much more explanation about the reasoning behind this initiative. We'll keep populating it with pieces from teachers and other sources. The spring issue of The Messenger will have a wonderful article about young people and media. You'll get tons of stuff at the employment sessions. I hope we can have some speakers next year all about modern education. Schools work best when they do so in partnership with families. Enough from me. You need to hear about what can happen, what is happening in the classrooms. It is very, very cool stuff. And as you do, I encourage you to listen to 3 particular threads. First, how this lets teachers add some more science to the art of teaching. Second, how teachers can better meet individual needs. Third, the evolving roles of both the teacher and the student. First up will be Donna Sands, 2nd grade teacher. Then we'll have Flora Heron, 5th grade language arts. And then Mark Cortez, middle school math.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I'm going to demonstrate some apps that we use in 2nd grade. I know other grade levels use them as well, but I'm going to show you how we use them in 2nd grade. In the morning when your children first get here, they, in the past, have liked to hang out in the hallway with their friends. I have my iPad sitting on my desk, and the children write down their homework, put their homework in their backpack, and get in as soon as they can because they want to be the first one to do extra math. So it has changed at the beginning of my day. The extra math program looks like this. I have it on the iPad when the children get there. A child touches, I'm not going to do it because it would show the child's scores, but the child just touches their name, they put in their PIN number, and they sign in. When they are through doing their math for the day, it immediately scrolls through and chooses a child who did not do it either the day before or who has not done it yet today. And so without me touching anything from the point I put it on my desk until they're through, the children handle the whole thing. It scrolls through and pulls up Grace L's name. Grace does it. It goes to the next person. She hands it to that person. If somebody is busy with me, they touch busy. If the child is absent, they touch absent. When they're through, they put it back on my desk. And at the end of the day, every child has done their math facts for the day. The great thing about this is they're not only doing their math facts for the day, because they can work independently rather than me having to give this to them. Instead of having children complete addition and subtraction, we now have children completing multiplication and 2 children who are working on division. That has never happened in 2nd grade before. I can honestly tell you that Ms. Schuler came down at the beginning of this year and said, "What are y'all doing in 2nd grade? This is fabulous." She was absolutely thrilled. So clearly we're going to be continuing with doing that. I would like to show you another app called Storia. Storia is a reading app. The children can check into this. And go to the bookshelves. So say a child is reading at level N. We determine that by how their DRA or their reading assessment score is. They go to level N, and that has the books on their level that are perfect for them to read. If they choose the app that has the lightning bolt, it means it is an interactive book. Using an interactive book, very excited, the child can do a number of things. The child can look up a word they might not know. It gives them the word. If they don't know how to read that word,
gentle,
it reads the word to them. Children in kindergarten, first and second grade, if they do not know how to read words, will often skip those words. If they have 2 or 3 words that they are skipping, they will get to the end of the page and they will lose comprehension. If a child gets to the end of the page and does not have comprehension of that page, the child is not reading, the child is word calling. We need to know that. The number one reason for children not to have comprehension is not understanding words. So to hand them the ability to touch a word and have it defined or read for them is just an amazing tool for the children to have. The other thing that you can do, you can stop and jot. In Readers Writers Workshop, we ask the children to stop and take notes while they are reading to check their comprehension. On this page, it had said that the puppy was happy and liked where it was. The stop and jot was, the puppy was happy. The child clearly understood the passage of the page. They can also highlight. So if they want to highlight something so that they can go back and know that that was an important part of the story, they can go back and they still have their highlight. This is for reading comprehension. There are 3 different questions that can be asked. The child can either choose or not to choose the comprehension questions. So as you can see, all of this is very interactive for the child. The children love that aspect of it. As the teacher, what I love is that although the children love to use this, if I go to my name and I go in and put in my code, it pulls up all of those levels I was just talking about. This is the part that Mark was talking about, the science. As a reading teacher, we stand in our classrooms and we look at the children and we see 16 to 19 children. And we observe them and we see them turn pages and we think that we know what they're doing. This is the scientific data that tells you what you can't see going on in a child's mind. So I go to level N, and I read reading reports. And it tells me exactly what that child did when they were reading that book. So I can see that on the Puppy Place book, in 2 minutes, a child read 20 out of 80 pages. I can tell you right now, at level N, that's not happening. That child is flipping pages. And the fact that I know that that child is flipping pages means that I can go to that child and not say, you're flipping pages, but I can say, let's look at the book you're reading. Let's read that together. I can steer them to a book that is more at the exact level they need, and then I can trace what they're doing the next day. So it literally gives you an insight into the reading and the mind of your reader. This has never existed for a reading teacher before. In my mind, it is the best tool I've ever been given to really assess what is happening with the individual readers and make sure that I understand their progress and what I need to do for each one of them. So I'm a big fan of Storia. Book Creator is another app that we love. The 8th graders came into our classroom last week. When they walked in the door, they told us for a service learning project that they were coming to teach my class how to plant an upside-down tomato plant. Children immediately wanted to take pictures. One of the girls in the class took pictures of this, and she chose which of the photographs we would be using, and then chose 1 or 2 children at a time to write the story of our book. I was involved in this as a guide, as a problem solver. The children did all of the work themselves, including the editing. So they are working on sequence, they are working on writing, they are working on editing, they are working on group projects, they're working on prediction. All of this done with the iPad completely independently. The 2nd graders just finished their first ever chapter books, all about animal books. We use World Book of Animals as one of our resources. If you choose an armadillo, you not only can read this information, you can look at related photographs, you can read more, you can compare animals. This one doesn't have it, but one of the favorite things was the one that actually had the animal sounds. You can just imagine what it sounded like in our classrooms. Notability is a fabulous app that we use for a lot of things. When we were studying butterflies, one of our students...
This is the cycle of an adult butterfly. It starts off as an egg, then when it hatches, there's a caterpillar. The caterpillar eats a lot of leaves. Then it goes into a chrysalis. In about a week, the chrysalis breaks open, and out comes an adult butterfly.
That took him about 5 minutes to do. Clearly, as an assessment tool, it's great for me to be able to see it. Did he enjoy that more than he would have drawing that or writing about that? Absolutely. And was he proud to show his family and other people what he had created? He loved it. Absolutely loved it. This is one of the favorite activities in my carpool. The children have the app, and they get to practice giving each other perimeter and area problems. Yahoo! They love it. They draw it, they give it to each other, they check their work, carpool, very, very fun. There are some other things they like to do as well, stack the states. Don't even study all of the states in the United States and their capitals in 2nd grade. But if you come into my classroom, 80% of the kids know most of them because they like to play stack the states, and that's one of the skills that is taught. We have many math games that the children play. Everyday Math is our program, but we bring many other math concepts and programs in as well. But Everyday Math does have math games for just about every concept we teach now. The kids love to do that. Here's an example of a very, very basic math game.
Which items go together?
This seems very basic.
1 cent, 10 cents.
And it is, but most of the time when we're teaching money, we have real money on the table and the children are using money. If I have a child who has a very difficult time not playing with things or fooling around with things, this is a perfect way for that child to work on money without being distracted. Most of the time I love hands-on learning. For some children, that can be a distraction at times. If I see a child who is having trouble matching money equivalencies because they're stacking their coins or they're rolling their coins or they're doing something other than what they need to do, this is a wonderful tool to offer them. It starts off very basically, but within about 10 minutes, gets much more difficult.
5 cents.
Those are the apps I wanted to share with you. Those are the apps, some of the apps that we're using. And I hope you enjoyed seeing them.
Hello, can you all hear me? All right. Well, about a year ago or so when they announced that we were going to move to this iPad, the first person I went to see was Chad Bridges, who is our maintenance guy. And I said, how can I change my room? I need to change my room. And then I went and found Mr. Wallace and said, I need to move everything. I moved my desk away from the center and put it right in the corner of the room. I started talking about how many shelves I could knock out. I started talking about how I could get rid of the monster computers that have been in there that run about as slow as an Apple IIe back from the 90s. And really I got excited about what's going to happen. I know a lot of you, and during open house, if you've been there, you know I call my classroom a beta classroom. And this is the first year I think it actually was a beta classroom. I was actually testing software in my classroom that I worked on over the summer. I wanted to show a few things that I tested this year, some ideas of what's going to happen in the future. So one of the things that I tested this year was expanding what I do with writing. I like using the iPad as a platform for connection. I get a little bit beyond apps. To me, I like it because it can connect to the internet, and then I use the sites that already exist there and are free. I don't have to keep rebuying app after app after app. I don't have to worry about updates. We use the sites that are there, and if the iPad isn't working, the platforms you have at home or even a simple cell phone will access most of these Web 2.0 sites. When we're writing collaboratively, I like using Wikispaces. This is a free Web 2.0 site, and this is the Explorer project that we started expanding. We've been doing it for a few years, but again, it was trips to the computer lab. It was those 6 very, very slow computers spread out so a third of the class was on the computer while a third was doing something else. What we were able to do this time with the carts was check all the iPads out at once, and kids were working collaboratively across, not only in the class, in the particular course, but across the sections. So I had one kid working with another kid in 5.2, working with another kid in 5.3. And so the students would take this, and they, of course, were given an Explorer. Here we have Jacques Cartier. And they basically would create their own wiki page, if you all have been on Wikipedia, about Jacques Cartier. And you see they've written these different paragraphs about the different parts of their life. They're including maps about the voyage. They're including what they wore, and, of course, death, legacy, and then the good old-fashioned bibliography, because, of course, they're reading biographies as they do this. What's really great about this particular Web 2.0 is that using the history, I can see everything that they've done when they've done it. And so when I'm checking their writing, and I'm not checking just the finished product, I can actually see the entire process of every child. Usually with students, you have to sit over them, and you can watch the process, you can see how they're thinking. I can get inside that now. I can actually see a little bit into their head of what they're doing. I can take this student here, and I'll select what she started with and what she finished with. And we can see it's going to show us what was deleted and what was inserted. So I can see where she started, what she decided to add, what she decided to delete. These are all timestamps, so I know exactly when they happened as well. So if they happened at 7:30 in the morning, I know they rushed it like during breakfast. And of course, I can see that this particular student did the entire bibliography when she was only supposed to do one entry. So, with this particular 2.0, there are other things that the kids do. This is the performance page from the Reader's Theater 2.0 that we did on Wikispaces. And here are, we've always done role-playing. I love role-playing for understanding what's going on in literature, what's going on in novels. They get a deeper understanding of the characters. They're able to make connections they wouldn't have been able to make. And what they did this year is we split the novel into sections. You can see pages 7 through 10, 38 through 44, etc. And a small group in each class was responsible for that particular section. And then they wrote a script based on the book. They acted out and recorded that script. They edited the video. And then, because of course they don't have access yet, I took that and uploaded it onto YouTube. And then I embedded it here on this wiki page. Next year they'll be able to do this all themselves. And it's the entire novel, all the way through from start to finish, at least the important parts, acted out and recorded. And so when we had our test on this, the students were able to use this as their study guide. This was a way for them, a student-created study guide, to understand the novel before we had our test. Now, Mark's going to talk about this a little bit more, but I wanted to mention how I flipped my grammar classroom. He's going to really get into this in detail, but basically I went to him and said, hey Mark, I need a lot of help on this because you are our resident expert. And so on this webpage, this is my webpage here, which is going to go away next year. You'll have something different to look at. I uploaded videos and put them here. And here we have this video, which was on linking verbs and action verbs. And so what I do is I record this video. This is like the mini lecture or the lecture that they would have when they receive that information at the beginning of the class. Only instead of doing the drill at home and the lecture at school, the lecture goes to home and the drill comes to school. And I work with each student as they need it. And so they have me to answer questions, not you, which hopefully you were happy about if you have a fifth grader. This is just, well, you want to know about. Well, I'm sorry about that. As we all know, this happens. One more time. Welcome back. Well, you already know about action verbs. But it's time that we learn about linking verbs. And so, I'm not going to make you watch that whole video. But you see how that, we start with that, and then when they come up to school, they'll do the drill on linking verbs with me. And the idea of this eventually is that they will not have to be at the same level anymore. We talk about trying to diversify our teaching to try to teach to the individual child. And so as we're working now, as I'm recording these lessons, they can be working on action verbs, linking verbs, adjectives. They can be working on substantive predicates. They can go to that video. They can watch that lecture. And then when they come to school, the students are actually working at whichever level they're at. And I'm with them, helping them at that level. Which, for me, I can take kids a lot further than I ever had. And when I was beta testing it this year, a lot of kids moved a lot faster than I thought they would through the material. Well, one more thing I wanted to show you. We had our witch trial. We have a witch trial every year when we read The Witch of Blackbird Pond. And it's usually just been a one-day project, and I was able to expand it using the iPad into more of a PBL project. Now, unfortunately, because of all these wonderful teachers here checking out those carts of iPads, by the time I wanted to run this, it was very, very difficult to get my hands on all those iPads. So I didn't get to expand the project as much as I wanted to this year, but I did get to beta test and look through some of the bugs. This is just my live binder. All the kids will have this. It's just pretty much, it looks like a binder, but it's a bunch of web pages that are linked together. So they would start and they would come in and they would read primary sources about Salem witch trials. There are slideshows for those who are more visual learners. There's an interactive witch hunt for those who need that tactile move through. I have a multi-link. This is really probably the best to link to all the different information they would need. Now, about 5 or 6 years ago, we were doing those global projects. You guys remember all those global projects? That was a big thrust. I love the global projects. One thing, though, is that you took your entire class out of your class. You sat them down somewhere. They listened to somebody. Maybe they asked a few questions, and then you went back to class. And I remember talking to my team how great it would be if the students just had something right there on their desk that they could do all of that with. And so part of what I worked with to beta test this year was the idea of finding live information and static information. So as they're working, they can look up all this information. It's more static, it's there, it exists, in their video, and it's fun. But one thing that I wanted them to be able to do was to actually talk to experts on this particular subject. And so I reached out to parents and I said, does anyone want to be legal experts on the witch trial and have to deal with the questions of fifth graders when it comes to legality, which can be, somewhat trying at times. But I actually had more volunteers than I could cope with. One of the issues I did run into was that the students seemed to know the technology a little bit better than some of the parents did. And right now this is taking a second to load up because I think a lot of people are on. But I was able to get them to actually, while they're working on their iPads, they were able to get on Blogger, and I had these parents open accounts, and they would communicate back and forth about what's the best way I could convince a bunch of fifth graders in a jury to convict this witch I'm trying to convince, or to find this witch innocent. So I'm actually using real live information as opposed to just the static information. I'm sorry that's not going up right now. I do use apps. I have a few. I just wanted to show you a couple that I use. I use them for immersion, the initial immersion into something. When we started Explorers, this is the app we chose. It had all these explorers on there. They would click and explore, and then they would be able to both read detailed biographies about that explorer, okay, as well as work through a multimedia about the explorer, which usually is involved a video. Of course, I go through this ahead of time and find what's in there, find what's not in there, and set up somewhat of an old-fashioned web search in it. But it's good for that initial immersion phase. To go along with what they're using Storia in the younger grades, I'm using subtext, and they buy their books through this app. And for me, this is a way to combine, I already do just right reading, but I also do novel study. I think that is important to be able to talk as a class about a similar novel, or at least in reading circles. And so I have them they're going to buy their books through this app that we use. And then, as you see here, I can put assignments in it, I can put discussions in it, I can set them into groups. I can put a live link in the page. So as they flip the page, a link will pop up, and that link can take them to a quiz, it can take them to an assignment I made, it can take them to me as a video asking them a question. And then they would answer it through that, or they'd answer it in discussion groups already set up in this app. What it enables, of course, me to do is I can set this up so that the students can read at their own pace, and if there are quizzes, when they get to that stage, they can take the quiz and keep moving on, as opposed to waiting 2 weeks later until the rest of the class catches up if they work ahead. If they fall behind, if they're sick, everything is here. They can do all the things that we would be doing in class on this. And then I can actually use the best of what the JRR, or Just Right Reading program, really is, which is working with them on an individual basis, and apply that even more to a novel that we're reading after. So I have a lot of other things I'd love to talk to you about, but I'm not going to because it takes way too much time. I'm really excited about this. I hope you all are as well. Thank you very much.
That's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about tonight is, what I'm excited about having iPads in every classroom is that it doesn't give me less time with the kids, it gives me more time with the kids, and it gives me more quality time working with the kids who need it. I get to answer that question that kid has at that moment. They don't all have to share me at the same time anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So first I'm going to start off and tell you a little bit of the story here. I started teaching about 20 years ago, and back then we used hammer and chisel and stones to take notes. But when I did begin, we were writing on chalkboards, the way we had been teaching for 200, 300 years. And in the course of my career, we're now here. And I'm here with this iPad. But about 10 years ago, when I was living in New Orleans and I was teaching in an independent school there, they had introduced a laptop program. And something that was great, and I don't have that great PowerPoint mark with the picture of an old digital camera. But we had a digital camera on campus. Man, wouldn't this be great? You know what I'll do? I'll take a picture of my notes as I write them on the board. And then I'll post those pictures to my website, and the kids will be able to go to it. So if they're absent, they can check on my notes, or they'll have exactly what I wrote on the board. And that worked for a while, but it was pretty labor intensive. And then the next stage was that we got a smartboard at the school. Now, it's not like our nice smartboards here where they're mounted on the wall. It was actually something that you pushed into the room. It had 15 cables, 25 feet long, and I was tethered to it. But what was great about it was that I never had to erase anymore. So the notes that I put on the board didn't go away. So anything a kid said, I'm sorry, Mr. Chris, I didn't see what you wrote up there. Could we go back? And I just pressed this little arrow that you may have seen. It goes back, and when I pressed on it, it would just go back to what I had just written. So I didn't lose anything, and they didn't lose anything. So I thought, man, this, we're living in the future. This is great. The next thing that I found, and this was about 2007 to 2008. A lot of you are probably beyond me on this, but I discovered this, what's called a screencasting program, and there are a lot of them out there, but the one that I found was Jing, J-I-N-G, and the kids, for whatever reasons, love this name. But Jing would record exactly what I was doing on the board and my voice simultaneously. So everything that happened in the class then got recorded. And so I would post that video on YouTube, and I would embed it on my website. So then, if you were absent, the kids could go and watch the video. And they could catch up, or if they were reviewing for a test, I don't remember how to do polynomial long division, which of course all of you did. But they did, and so now they could go and they could review that right before the quiz or the test and keep that fresh in their minds. So what I began thinking was, wouldn't it be great actually if rather than having all of you having to sit here listening to me at this moment, going as fast as I'm going or going as slow as I'm going, wouldn't it be great if you got to pick how fast I go? If you don't hear what I just said, you can pause it and go back and hear me again. And you can't do that right now. I mean, I could pause and go back and say it again. But now that it's posted on the website, kids can watch the video at their leisure, when it's best for them, right after school if they're getting stuff done before they go home, or right after volleyball practice but before dinner, or maybe right after dinner when they settle down to do their homework. These things are available to them at that time when they want it at their pace. Not only that, they stop asking you how to do polynomial long division because the next day they come in and we do our work together. And this is something that Thor was mentioning earlier. The name of it is the Flipped Classroom. I'm sure you've seen it in all of the papers and magazines. I mean, it's sort of been a hot topic for a while. And it's a great idea because what it really does is it takes one of me and makes 18 or 19 of me for a classroom. And they can watch me at their leisure and at their pace. And then the next day, when they have that question, rather than you pulling your hair out trying to figure out how to do these things again, they have me as a resource the next day. Not only that, and this is what I wanted to get to, is that they have me, the ones that need me have me. I get more one-on-one directed work with the students that need me, and the students who feel fine and are confident in what they're doing, they're getting their work done, they're doing lots more stuff in the classroom than they were before. And in addition to that, in addition to me getting more time with the students, they get more time with each other. And there's a lot of peer-to-peer teaching going on as well. So let me stop for a moment. I mean, after bringing you through that brief timeline, this is my webpage. That's me. I don't know if you can see, but I'm sweating right there. And basically, I mean, this will change next year, but this is a pretty basic website. But on this website, Blake, have you seen this website? Blake's seen this website. On this website, you can get your extra credit sheets, you can get your homework calendar. We can keep you up to date just through this website. But part of this website is essential for the classroom, so I'm going to click on, how long you there? I'm going to go right here to Unit 6. And there will be a quiz on this at the end of the night, so please make sure you pay attention. You can go back and watch the videos if you need to. Now, how does the iPad tie into this? Okay. On the level. Okay, folks, so you get to hear me all polynomial long division. I know it sounds like, I don't know, whatever, crazy. But it's not difficult at all. Okay? I want to actually do a problem like we used to do, long division. 8 into 356, or not 356, let's make it 376. Okay? 376. So say 8 goes into 37 4 times, so we divide it. Now we need to multiply. 4 times 8 is 32. Now we're going to subtract. 37 minus 32 is 5. Now we're going to bring down the 6. 8 goes into 56 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. None left over. Okay? Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. And then you just start over again. Divide, and then you multiply 7 times 8, you get 56, then you subtract and you get 0. And we don't have anything left to bring down. You just keep going through that path. You're going to do the same thing with this polynomial fraction. Okay? Now remember, the number in the numerator always goes on top. So I'm going to write it x squared. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. The number in the numerator always goes, wait, I'm sorry. Divide, and then you multiply 7 times 8, you get 56. Okay, well I'm not going to make you go through that again to make my point. But then you can pause and go back, and you can hear that again if you missed it, if you were distracted by something else that caught your attention. You can go back and check on that, see it again. You can review it again before a test. So we've been working this way, and I think it's been very successful. Now, how are the iPads going to help us with that? First of all, this is labor intensive. It's a lot of different programs that we're pulling together, like laptops, screencasting programs. All of that is being pulled together. The kids have textbooks, the kids have notebooks, the kids have calculators, they have pens. And I know that it's not your kids, but some kids have trouble keeping up with stuff. The iPad helps us stay organized as well. Okay? So I'm going to pull up here. Next year, all of the work that I've done over the past 10 years, I get to throw out now, which is good. But I'm going to be using an app called the Palooza app next year, and I'm sort of in the middle of it right here. But there's an app for this now, for our textbook, for our notebooks. All of this stays in one place. And again, remember, I'm telling you, this gives me more time with the students, because for polynomial division, they no longer get me. They get...
With this example, I want to illustrate a brand new technique, which is actually the equivalent to long division that we used to perform with regular numbers. We can actually perform long division with polynomials. But first, to inspire it and make sure we have the right answer, let's just take a look at this particular division of polynomials. And I want to do it just, first of all, by seeing if I can simplify. So let me write the numerator, which is going to be this.
Yeah, I'm going to pause Ed there for a moment, because I don't think you need to go through that again. But we don't need my videos any longer. This is embedded in the textbook. So when we begin this chapter on dividing polynomials, each one of the examples has a video of him explaining how to do this. In addition to that, it has examples called step reveal. So instead of seeing everything at one time, they can move through it one step at a time with an explanation. They can go back and see what that was again. How did I get to this step? How did I get to this step? And the next step. So there's a lot of independent ability for them to go through the work as well. Now, what they're going to do is, they're going to use a program called Notability, which you saw earlier tonight with Donna. Now, I have all of this organized in folders, and I'll bring up, we've had some kids using Notability this year, kids with their iPads that they've been bringing to class, and I just happen to have one here because I'm very good at homework check, aren't I? Like, I get it right back to you, don't I? So I don't have it here anymore, but I do have this student's. And she turned this into me today. And so it looks like this. And she can, and I can write on this with my stylus, or with my finger if I need to. 100. Great job. This gets emailed back to her. We don't change paper, it just comes to me this way. Not only that, I don't know about some of you, but my eyes are, as I'm getting older, I can't see anything anymore. So I just make it a little bigger. And I can see exactly what work she's done. And it's right there. And what I've noticed is that kids differ with their handwriting. We talked about handwriting earlier tonight. And this has been a fascinating improvement for their handwriting, because they don't necessarily write small, or they don't write big, but they change the page to fit their need, and however they need to write. And so I can, and a lot of kids use this thing, and they can write right here, and it comes up at the top of the screen, and hey, this is good. Okay? And it makes it much easier for them to present their work, get that work to me. I get to see it, they get to share it. And everything is sort of in a one-stop shop. And it helps them organize themselves, because one of the key things for our middle schoolers is just organizational skills, because they're dealing with so many things. So they've got their textbook here. They have their notebook here. In addition to that, They've got their calculator here, so they can do their problems. I mean, they can do calculations right here. They also have a calculator on their desk as well. But all of this is very available to them, and they're very adept at switching back and forth between different programs or different apps that work for them. So I'm hoping that I was able to give you some idea about what we will be doing with this next year, what this is going to allow us to do. It's going to facilitate what I've been doing with flipped classroom, but it brings it all into one space, in one place. And it makes it much more efficient for them, and we get so much more done. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming out tonight. I hope that's
good in-depth look at how it's happening already at 3 different levels in 3 different ways. But you can clearly see those threads that I was talking about there and how they're playing through this. Now, around the room, we have a variety of stations set up for you to go around and explore and see some more of what's been going on and some more of what's coming. There's no pattern to it or anything like that. Just explore freely and kind of see what's going on. We're going to do that for about 20, 25 minutes or so, and then I'll try to manage to corral you back in here for the Q&A session, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. What we have done is to gather up the questions that were put on index cards, put in the basket over there, and kind of group them together. And so Scott's going to sort of moderate this for us, and then we'll wrap it up.
So you're going to answer from the podium?
Or wherever.
Everybody hear me? Okay. So I'm Scott Parks. I'm a trustee and secretary for the board. A little bit of personal background. I've got a son who's in 7th grade and a daughter who's a sophomore in high school. So for many of you younger parents, I have sort of been through the pipeline and emerged on the other end. And just a word to comment on what Mark said earlier. You know, having been here for almost 12 years, I can tell you I've seen a lot of change. A lot of great things have happened in the walls here at P4 and Harder. But 2 things have not changed. 2 important things have not changed. Committed parents. To see a room like this full, parents who really care. Mark talked about the partnership of great parents and great schools and great teachers, what it takes. And the second thing are the great teachers that we have. And to see that we had all these teachers here tonight. So before we even get to questions, let's just give a round of applause. Okay, Mark, you ready?
I hope so.
Okay. We're going to start easy. So the first one is, what model device needs to be bought?
Okay, what we have recommended is the iPad 3 with the 64 gigs. And the reason we have recommended that is while it might be more expensive up front, the idea is that it will actually help you in the long term, because they will fill these things up very, very quickly. You noticed a lot of what you saw as you went around the room involved video, and that just uses it up and uses it up and uses it up. Now, with good file management, yeah, you can probably get away with 32 or something else. But for example, also, the Mark Cortez referenced the book that they're going to be using in algebra. That thing by itself takes up something like 12 gigs because of everything that's in it. Okay, so that's what we're recommending.
Okay, Mark, our next question is sort of a basic like that. How many passwords, pins, or user IDs will kids need to know?
You know, that is a great question. And we haven't really thought about that piece of this. All I've really thought about is, okay, they're going to have to know their 4-digit password at the beginning. And that's what we're going to have to look at. Because it's really going to depend somewhat on what classes they're in and what their teachers have them doing, and whether some of those things are password protected or not. So I don't have a perfectly clear answer for that.
Okay, next that starts to get a little into classroom. How will the students, will the students have a stylus to use with the iPads to learn proper handwriting skills that normally you do paper and pen? So what's sort of that?
I know that at certain levels they have talked about making sure that the kids have a stylus, particularly with the younger grades. Also, when it comes to the handwriting, remember one of the things that I mentioned was the Handwriting Without Tears app. And part of the beauty for that, while it's not the same thing as paper and pencil, is you get on there and you do your letter and you literally get instant feedback. You know, if you make the letter correctly, you get nice little noises. If you make it incorrectly, it groans or something like that. So immediately you know that. You're not sitting there making 13 letters in 13 different ways. You're doing it the same way, you know, each time you're getting that. And there will still be plenty of paper and pencil activity and things like that. Again, you go to that idea we talked about, we're committed to the whole child and we know what kids need at different levels. You know, for us, handwriting is not just about handwriting. Handwriting is extremely important because of how it develops the fine motor skills and how that's developed in neurological development. So we're not going to let that go away.
My neighbor, I saw her writing the questions on this. Okay, so this next was a really good question. How are you going to verify that web links or sites are factual?
Okay, that's a great question. And, you know, to a degree, you can't. Okay, so I mentioned how a lot of this is about being a responsible user, a smart user. It's the same thing with the idea of media literacy. And I talked about the idea of literacy changing. And it's not the 3 R's anymore. And part of that is learning how to discern whether or not what you're getting is correct information or information that you can trust. And as students are younger, that's not as much of an issue. We vet things for them. You know, we have the apps that you saw demonstrated tonight. Those made the cut out of dozens and dozens of things that we demoed and tried out. As kids get older, we will do more and more with them in terms of learning media literacy. For instance, how you can look at a URL and use that to help you determine if this is a site that you should trust. So while there are no guarantees, it raises a very important question, and again goes to that idea that I mentioned about how the idea of school not just being about consumption. Now it's about how do you live in this new world where information is so cheap, and you don't know how valid or good all of it is. So how do you navigate that world? There's no guarantees, you know that. But you also know if you read it on the internet, it's true. That's where I learned this teacher.
Kids' life skills and how to verify, how to understand, express the knowledge.
Exactly. I mean, I'll give you an example too. It's also teaching kids to be cautious and to think. My son is very into pole vaulting, of all things. That's his new passion. So he has been exploring online, trying to find where he can go to a pole vault camp this summer. He found a place and just decided to go ahead and email them, not knowing anything about them. Okay, so it went into a lesson on, Stephen, let's talk about this a little bit. How did you know you could trust these people? What made you think the site was okay? Well, it was really cool. Good pictures. So you got that.
I'm sold. Okay, so Mark, this next question says, after reading a story, how do you make sure that each student learns the important teaching points of the story? In other words, the moral of the story or the comprehension portion.
Sure, in a lot of ways, the same way that you always have. There's still assessment practices, there's still writing assignments. One of the things that Donna talked about in her presentation on the story was the idea of the stop and jot. And so in some ways, you're actually going to be able to better see what they're getting and what they're not getting, because as she mentioned and Thor mentioned in his, you're going to be getting into their minds in ways that you've never been able to before. And then there's still going to be the things where they're going to be writing essays and doing presentations and all those sorts of things that will allow you to see if they've gotten that.
Okay, next question is, what happens if the kid goes to a less technically advanced high school? What are the implications there?
Well, you know, most high schools now have pretty heavy technology emphasis also. There's not too many of them that haven't gone to some sort of one-to-one program, whether it's everybody has a laptop or bring your own device or something like that. But one of the things I would also say is whether it's less technologically advanced or not, as I said earlier in my remarks, this really is not about technology. This is about developing certain skills and attitudes and mindsets and practices. And because they're getting that, they're going to be better served wherever they go because of what they've learned through this.
Okay. I had a couple of questions here that are pretty similar, so I'm going to sort of bridge them together. So how do we know, or what are the outcome measures for iPad? Or said another way, what research or facts out there tell us that this is, in fact, an effective approach?
Okay. Well, I'm going to shift the question a little bit because, again, it's not about iPads. It's not about technology. So I'm going to shift the question a little bit and say, what are the outcomes in terms of how does this help us with teaching and learning and showing that it has aided in that. And, we're still early enough in this where there's not a tremendous amount of longitudinal study out there. And the device is simply hasn't been around long. But if you go by some of the early data that is out there, and I mentioned something called, what I call my manifesto that we're going to be posting on the website. And you'll find some information about returns in there and what they're seeing. And one of the things referenced in there is something called the Horizon Report. And the Horizon Report is something that comes out every single year, looks at trends in technology and media, and talks about the implications for education. And they do a meta-analysis. They take multiple studies and then put it together. And what they have said regarding the iPad is that the outcomes are very positive, and where they're mainly positive is an increased student engagement, a stronger sense of leadership, and better teamwork and communication. And those are pretty vital skills for any students to be developed.
Okay, a couple more questions here. And just I want to let everybody know, we're going to post all these questions on the one-to-one page on the website, so they'll all be there for you. If you want to reference them, if you want to, tell friends who weren't able to come. So all that's going to be there. If you have a subsequent question that comes up, Mark says, email me. So there you go. Email Mark. Or if you have one that you're thinking of tonight and you want to drop in the basket, we'll make sure we pick all those up. But a couple more questions for you, Mark. One is, what are your primary concerns about this, and what steps are you taking to make sure that you're addressing those concerns?
That's a difficult question. My primary concern, of course, is that it's not going to work. I'm joking. I'm fully confident that it's going to work. It's just one of those things, because this is so different, because we are doing something that is so vitally important, but also so different, even with all of the preparation that we have done. We have been working our tails off on this thing. You could see it and what was going on. But I can think, what have we missed? What have we forgotten? What did we not think about here? What's going to be the surprise? Because we know there are going to be glitches along the way. So then we'll have to deal with them. The question that came up about how many passwords are they going to have to know. We hadn't thought about that, but it's a really good question. So I'd say that's the main thing, is what's going to be the first big surprise that pops up. But I think that also all the preparation that we have done will give us the means to handle whatever does pop up. And we've also developed a great set of resources to help us with whatever pops up.
Okay, last question, Mark. Several teachers have said students are learning faster using iPad. Is there a sense that this might shift content down to lower grades?
Do I think it may shift content down to lower grades? No, I don't think it will shift content down to lower grades. And content is not really the issue here. The issue here is skills. The issue here is learning. The issue here is individualizing for kids and making sure that they can get whatever they're ready for at any particular level. Will that mean that some things shift down? Yeah, because some kids are ready for that. Will it mean that we may go a little bit slower in some places? Yes. But it's not about shifting content down. It's about meeting kids where they are and giving them the appropriate challenges. I'm also a firm believer that intellectually kids thrive on challenges. You put the bar there, and they'll figure out some way to jump over it. I'm not saying that you do that in a way that stresses them out or drives them crazy or whatever. But they'll thrive on the challenges. They can do more intellectually than sometimes we give them credit for. And not in the same fashion that they can when they're older. But that's what I'm excited about here because of the possibilities that this opens up for them in that regard. So, worried about content shifting down? No. I do see us shifting positive experiences down. That's it. All right. Well, I'm going to finish with a couple very quick remarks. The first one is thank you for being here tonight very, very much. Before you leave, make sure you pick up your handouts if you haven't gotten them. They are grade level specific. And what you will find is on the front, key points from tonight's presentation, the things that I really want you to think about. And then on the back is a list of apps recommended at each grade level, along with some other general resources that would be good for you to be aware of. So I hope the evening has helped you feel informed and inspired, and I'd like to close with this. Imagine what the world could be like when our children are adults. Imagine what they will need to succeed. Imagine the possibilities of what they could accomplish. Imagine what sort of education will best prepare our children. That's why St. John's is implementing the Imagine One-to-One iPad program. Thank you.